I just can't believe she would change everything at the last minute, I said, staring at the documents Mark had triumphantly spread across our kitchen table. Aunt Eleanor and I were so close. Face it, Emma, Mark replied, barely containing his glee. She saw what I saw. You're not cut out to manage a real estate empire. I am. My name is Emma Collins, and at 34, I was watching my husband of 8 years reveal his true colors in spectacular fashion. The papers in front of me showed that my beloved Aunt Eleanor had apparently changed her will 2 weeks before her death, leaving her vast portfolio of commercial properties to Mark instead of me. Properties I'd helped her manage for the past decade while Mark focused on his consulting business that never quite seemed to take off. Think about it logically, he continued, pouring himself a celebratory glass of wine, my aunt's favorite vintage, of course. Who better to take over? A successful businessman or? He gestured vaguely in my direction, someone who just followed your aunt around taking notes. I picked up one of the documents, examining the signature. And you just happened to be there when she made these changes. She asked for my advice about the business, he said smoothly. One thing led to another, and she realized I was the better choice. Simple as that. Simple as that. Just like it had been simple when he convinced me to put his name on our house's deed for tax purposes. Simple when he suggested combining our bank accounts because married couples shouldn't keep secrets. Simple when he slowly took control of every financial decision in our lives. But what Mark didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Aunt Eleanor and I had seen him coming years ago. Remember when you told her she should get rid of that vacant lot on 7th Street? I asked, watching his face carefully. Said it was worthless. He waved dismissively. That dump? Should have been demolished years ago. Interesting, I said, pulling out my phone. Because that dump is now the site of the city's newest luxury apartment complex. Breaking ground next month. I showed him the news article. His eyes widened slightly before he caught himself. Well, that's even better then. Another asset for me to manage. I stood up, gathering my coat. You know what the funny thing is, Mark? For someone who claims to be such a brilliant businessman, you never bothered to look into why that lot stayed vacant for so long. Or why Aunt Eleanor kept paying property taxes on an apparently worthless piece of land. He frowned. What are you talking about? I have a meeting to get to, I said, heading for the door. But you might want to dig a little deeper into those properties you think you've inherited. You might find some interesting surprises. Where are you going? He demanded, following me. We're not done discussing this. Actually, we are. For now. I turned back to him with a smile. Oh, and Mark? Aunt Eleanor hated that wine. The only reason she kept it around was to see who would pretend to know her tastes better than she did. I left him standing there, sputtering, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Caroline Webb had been Aunt Eleanor's attorney for 20 years, and now she was mine. He did exactly what you predicted, I told her, settling into the chair across from her desk. Right down to the smug wine drinking. Caroline smiled, pulling out a thick folder. Your aunt was an excellent judge of character. She spotted his type the moment you brought him home. I thought back to that first dinner, 6 years ago. Aunt Eleanor hosting us in her magnificent Victorian mansion, watching quietly as Mark bragged about his business ventures and future plans. Later, after he'd left, she'd taken my hands in hers and said something I didn't understand at the time. My dear, sometimes the best way to protect what matters is to let others think they've already taken it. Over the next few years, she taught me everything she knew about property management, real estate development, and most importantly, how to protect assets from people exactly like Mark. The holding company paperwork is all in order, Caroline said, breaking into my memories. Everything was transferred legally and properly years ago. The properties in your aunt's will are essentially empty shells, I finished. The real ownership was transferred to River Valley Holdings long before she died. And River Valley Holdings belongs to me. I smiled. With an ironclad trust structure that predates my marriage to Mark. Caroline nodded approvingly. The worthless lot on 7th Street alone is worth more than all the properties he thinks he's inherited. The development deal you negotiated will triple that value. I thought about Mark, probably still sitting at our kitchen table, thinking he'd won everything. He had no idea that Aunt Eleanor had spent the last 5 years of her life preparing for exactly this scenario. The properties in the will were just the surface, older buildings, some needing repairs, the kind of real estate that would look impressive to someone like Mark who never bothered to dig deeper. The real empire, the prime development lots, the new construction projects, the long-term leases with major corporations, all of that had been quietly transferred to River Valley Holdings. My phone buzzed. Mark again. I ignored it. When do you want to tell him? Caroline asked. Not yet, I replied. First, I want to see what else he tries. Aunt Eleanor always said the best way to deal with a snake is to let it show its whole pattern before you cut off its head. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from our family friend, Thomas. Mark's here at the bank, trying to access Eleanor's safety deposit box. Says he has authority as the estate's new administrator. I showed the message to Caroline, who smiled. Shall I call the bank manager? No, I said after a moment's thought. Let him try. Let him think he's going to find something valuable in there. What Mark would actually find was a single envelope with his name on it. Aunt Eleanor's final message to the man she'd known would betray her niece's trust. I remembered the day we put it in there, just 2 months before her diagnosis. She'd been so precise about the wording, writing and rewriting until every word was perfect. Sometimes, my dear, she'd told me, the best revenge is letting someone realize slowly, piece by piece, just how badly they've miscalculated. As I left Caroline's office, another text came through from Thomas. He's reading the letter now. His face, wish you could see this. I could imagine it. Mark, standing in the private viewing room at the bank, reading Aunt Eleanor's elegant handwriting. Dear Mark, if you're reading this, you've done exactly what I knew you would do. Did you really think I wouldn't protect Emma from someone like you? Everything you think you've won is worthless compared to what you've lost. Your mask has slipped, and now she sees you for what you really are. Sincerely, Eleanor. My phone started ringing again, Mark's number flashing urgently. I let it go to voicemail and headed to my next meeting. The developers for the 7th Street project were eager to finalize details, and I had an empire to run. Mark could wait. He'd spent years underestimating me, treating me like I was just the quiet wife who helped her eccentric aunt with paperwork. Now he would learn, piece by piece, just how wrong he'd been. I pulled into the parking lot of River Valley Holdings' modest offices. From the outside, it looked like any other small property management company. Inside was the command center of Aunt Eleanor's, now my real estate empire. Sarah, my assistant and fellow soldier in this long game, met me at the door. Mark's been calling the office too, she said, falling into step beside me. Should I keep blocking his calls? For now, I replied. Has he figured out about the development company yet? No, but he's trying. He's been calling all our old contractors, throwing his weight around as the new owner of the Collins properties. I smiled. Let him dig. Every call he made, every person he bullied, was just another nail in his coffin. What's our next move? Sarah asked as we entered my office. I sat down at my desk, Aunt Eleanor's old desk, restored and relocated here years ago, and opened my laptop. Now, I said, we start Phase 2. Phase 2 began exactly as Aunt Eleanor had planned it. One by one, the tenants in the properties Mark thought he'd inherited started receiving notices. Their leases, apparently held by shell companies, were being terminated for redevelopment. My phone rang just after the first batch of notices went out. Mark, of course. What the hell is happening? He demanded when I finally answered. The Thompson building just lost its biggest tenant. They are saying some company called River Valley Holdings owns their lease. Really? I kept my voice neutral. How strange. This has something to do with you, doesn't it? What are you playing at, Emma? I thought about all the times he'd dismissed my playing at real estate with Aunt Eleanor. All the condescending pats on the head, the eye rolls when I talked about property management. I'm not playing at anything, Mark. I'm running a business. Something you claimed I wasn't capable of doing, remember? He was quiet for a moment. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with all this. We should talk. Over dinner, like civilized people. We're still married, after all. Are we? I asked softly. Because my lawyer sent divorce papers to your office this morning. You should be receiving them any minute now. As if on cue, I heard voices in the background, followed by a knock on his door. Hold on, he muttered. Then, muffled, what? Oh. I see. Leave them on my desk. When he came back to the phone, his voice had changed. You're divorcing me? Now? While we're in the middle of this estate mess. The estate isn't messy at all, Mark. It's quite clean, actually. You got exactly what Aunt Eleanor wanted you to have, a lesson in humility. I hung up and turned to Sarah, who had been quietly taking notes during the call. Are we ready for the next phase? She nodded, pulling up a document on her tablet. The development plans for all the properties are finalized. Once we announce River Valley's ownership and the full scope of the projects, the properties Mark inherited will be essentially worthless, I finished. Surrounded by modern, competitive developments that will drain away any potential tenants. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from our bank. Mark was trying to access our joint accounts. I smiled, remembering the day 3 years ago when I'd quietly moved my money into separate accounts, leaving just enough in the joint ones to avoid suspicion. Should I call Mr. Pace at the bank? Sarah asked. No need. Let Mark discover on his own that his financial kingdom is built on sand. The next few days were a blur of activity. River Valley Holdings announced its comprehensive development plan for the city, 12 major projects that would transform entire neighborhoods. The business press ate it up, particularly the angle of a female-led company making such ambitious moves. Mark's properties, the ones he'd stolen through the manipulated will, were conspicuously isolated from these developments. Each announcement drove their value down further. Then came the profiles in business magazines. The hidden real estate empire of Eleanor Collins, one headline read. Meet Emma Collins, the quiet powerhouse behind River Valley Holdings, said another. I kept copies of every article, watching as the story unfolded in the press exactly as Aunt Eleanor had predicted it would. She'd known that Mark's ego wouldn't be satisfied with just stealing the properties. He'd want public recognition, accolades, respect. Instead, he was watching from the sidelines as I emerged as the true heir to the Collins real estate legacy. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I found him waiting by my car. How long? He asked, his voice hoarse. How long have you been planning this? I studied him in the fading light. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his confident smirk replaced by desperate anger. I didn't plan this, Mark. Aunt Eleanor did. She saw what you were years ago, a manipulator, a man who marries women for their money and then systematically takes control of everything they have. His face paled. What are you talking about? Did you think we wouldn't find out about Jessica? Or Maria? Your 2 previous wives who mysteriously lost everything to you before you moved on. He took a step back. That's not, you can't prove. Actually, we can. Aunt Eleanor hired private investigators years ago. She was very thorough in protecting me from becoming your 3rd victim. I opened my car door. The divorce papers are quite clear, Mark. You get nothing from me, and the prenup you thought was so simple actually has a fidelity clause. Those photos of you and your secretary at the motel last month? They're going to cost you everything you came into this marriage with. You bitch, he whispered. You played me. All these years. No, Mark. I loved you. I trusted you. You're the one who played games. I just learned to beat you at them. I drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. Later that night, I sat in Aunt Eleanor's old study, now mine, in the Victorian mansion he'd never known I owned separately from the estate. The room still smelled faintly of her perfume, and her presence felt strong as I reviewed the final pieces of our long game. The next morning, the announcements went out. River Valley Holdings was merging with 2 other development companies to form one of the largest real estate investment trusts in the region. The properties Mark had inherited were being offered a buyout, at 20 cents on the dollar of their previous value. He had no choice but to sell. The buildings were hemorrhaging tenants, and the property taxes alone would bankrupt him within months. When the dust settled, I sat down to write him one final letter. Dear Mark, Aunt Eleanor taught me that true strength isn't in taking things from others, it's in building something of your own. You spent years underestimating me, seeing only what you wanted to see. Now you've lost everything trying to steal what was freely offered to you all along. If you had been a true partner, all of this would have been ours together. I'm keeping your wine collection. Aunt Eleanor would have appreciated the irony. Goodbye, Emma. I sealed the envelope and handed it to Sarah to deliver. Then I turned back to my work. There were properties to develop, deals to make, and a legacy to build. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying someone else's dreams. It's in fulfilling your own. And letting them watch from the outside as you succeed beyond their wildest expectations. Aunt Eleanor had taught me well. The quiet ones, she always said, were the ones to watch out for. They see everything, plan carefully, and when they finally make their move, they don't just win, they change the game entirely.